Welcome to the deep dive. You sent us the research, we tore through the stack, and now we're delivering the custom insight you need fast. Today, we're talking about one of the most studied supplements out there, but maybe still one of the most misunderstood: creatine. Our mission today is simple. Cut through all the marketing noise. We need to pin down exactly how this stuff works in your body, figure out the gold standard dosing, and finally settle the score on that big monohydrate debate. Is the basic stuff really all you need, or are those newer, pretty expensive variants actually worth your money? Let's dive in. Okay, so starting right at the core, the molecular level, we have to talk about energy. Your body's currency, basically. Creatine is absolutely fundamental because it directly supports your body's fastest energy system. Think of your main energy molecule as cash, that's ATP, adenosine triphosphate.
Right, you burn that for pretty much everything. Exactly. Especially short, really high-intensity efforts, like a heavy lift, a sprint, that kind of thing. But that ATP cache, it runs out fast during those intense moments. And when it's spent, it becomes ADP. Now that's where creatine supplementation comes in. Creatine grabs a phosphate molecule, becoming phosphocreatine. Think of this as your super fast emergency battery.
Ah, okay. The backup power.
Precisely. It quickly donates its phosphate back to that spent ADP, regenerating ATP almost instantly.
So it's like the lightning-fast pit crew for your muscles, getting them ready to go again.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. By saturating your cells with phosphocreatine through supplementation, you're essentially stocking that emergency reserve, filling it right up.
Right.
And that really matters because your ability to recover and perform between those short bursts of high effort, it improves dramatically. It's not really that creatine makes you instantly stronger on the first rep, but it allows for much faster ATP replenishment.
Meaning your second, third, maybe fourth set in a workout, they're sustained better, less drop off.
Exactly. You can maintain that high effort for longer or recover faster between efforts.
And that rapid replenishment, that's what leads to the practical result everyone's after, isn't it?
Yes.
Improved ability to sustain peak power, maybe generate higher force, and crucially, I think, increase your total training volume over time.
That's the key long-term driver.
Because that extra volume, those extra quality reps and sets, that's where the real strength and muscle gains compound over weeks and months. Now, for years, creatine's been called, the king of athletic supplements. And our sources really back that up. The evidence is just massive. We're talking robust, well-replicated effects on athletic performance. Strong, consistent data showing improved sprint performance, maximal strength, power output. If you're lifting heavy, doing anything explosive, the effect seems pretty undeniable based on the research.
Absolutely undeniable for physical performance. But here's where it gets, genuinely interesting and maybe a bit surprising for some listeners. The benefits aren't strictly limited to the gym or the track. There's emerging evidence pointing to a cognitive support role, too.
Wait, hold on. So the supplement known for, bigger biceps, it might also help your brain function. That seems kind of worlds apart.
It does sound that way initially, yeah. But think about the brain as an incredibly energy-demanding organ.
Okay.
The cognitive effects aren't universal, like the strength benefits, but they are meaningful in specific situations, specific populations where the brain is under, let's say, metabolic stress.
Metabolic stress. Like what?
Like sleep deprivation. There's evidence suggesting creatine can help maintain mental performance, things like reaction time, executive function when you haven't had enough sleep. We also see potential benefits in groups who naturally have lower baseline creatine levels in their bodies, primarily vegetarians and vegans, and also older adults.
Wow. Okay, so if you're, say, plant-based and pulling an all-nighter for work, creatine might actually give you a little cognitive edge. Help with focus or recall.
That's the idea, yes. It's like providing extra energy reserve for your neurons when they're working overtime or have less energy available. It definitely flips the script on how most people view creatine.
It really does.
But, and this is crucial, we need to be clear about the magnitude of the effect. Looking at the sources, the athletic benefits. Strong, consistent, pretty much guaranteed if you respond. Creatine 101. The cognitive effects. They're generally smaller, more variable. And you're most likely to notice them if you fall into one of those specific high-need categories: sleep-deprived, vegetarian, older, adult.
So not quite a magic brain pill for everyone, but potentially very useful for certain people in certain conditions.
Precisely. It's a powerful muscle tool with these interesting, more nuanced brain benefits for specific groups.
That clarity is super helpful. Okay, which brings us to the next massive question, especially for anyone new to this: dosing. This is where that whole loading phase confusion comes in, right?
Absolutely. People hear loading and aren't sure if it's mandatory. So essentially, there are two main ways to get your muscles fully saturated with creatine. The first and simplest route is the maintenance strategy. You just take a standard dose, usually 3 to 5 grams per day, every single day.
Simple enough. What's the catch?
The catch is just time. It takes longer to reach full saturation this way, usually somewhere around 2 to 4 weeks for most people to max out their muscle stores.
Okay, so patience is required. And the second strategy, the faster one.
That's the well-known loading protocol. This involves taking a much higher dose initially, typically 20 grams per day.
20 grams. That sounds like a lot.
It is, and that's why you split it up, usually 4 separate 5-gram doses spread throughout the day. You do this for about 5 to 7 days.
And after that week?
Then you drop right back down to the standard maintenance dose, that same 3 to 5 grams per day, just to keep the stores topped up.
Okay, so let's cut to the chase for the listener. Is that aggressive loading phase strictly necessary? I know I used to think it was absolutely essential back in the day.
Yeah, a lot of people did. But the short answer from the evidence is no, not strictly necessary. Loading just accelerates the saturation process. You get the benefits faster, maybe within that first week. But if you skip loading and go straight to the 3 to 5 grams maintenance dose, you will eventually reach the exact same level of muscle saturation and get the exact same long-term benefits. It just takes, maybe 3 or 4 weeks instead of 1.
So it's basically a trade-off. Faster results with loading versus maybe better tolerance and simplicity with just starting maintenance.
Exactly. It depends on your goals and maybe your patience level.
And speaking of tolerance, that high-dose loading, 20 grams a day, that's often linked to stomach issues, right?
Yeah.
GI distress, bloating.
It certainly can be for some individuals, yes, which is why practical tips are important here. If you are worried about digestive issues, especially if you do choose to load, maybe start on the lower end of maintenance first, say 3 grams a day, see how you feel, then bump it up to 5 grams. And probably the most crucial tip, always try to take your creatine with food or mixed into a shake, like a protein shake.
Not on an empty stomach.
Definitely not ideal for higher doses. Taking it with food, particularly carbs or protein, seems to improve absorption and significantly reduces the chances of stomach upset or bloating for most people.
Good tip. Now, what about timing during the day? Pre-workout, post-workout, morning, night. Does it actually matter when you take that daily dose?
This is another area with a lot of debate, but the research is actually pretty clear on the main point. Consistency is king. Getting that 3 to 5 grams in every day is what drives the long-term muscle saturation and benefits. The total daily intake matters far, far more than the exact timing.
Okay, so don't stress if you miss the perfect window.
Exactly. Just take it when you remember. However, if you want to optimize every little detail, there is some evidence suggesting that taking it post-workout might be slightly better.
Why post-workout?
The theory involves insulin. Consuming creatine alongside carbohydrates and protein, which you often do post-workout, spikes insulin. And insulin can help shuttle nutrients, including creatine, into muscle cells more effectively.
Interesting. So maybe a slight edge, but consistency is the main thing.
Absolutely. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Get it in daily.
Right. And we absolutely have to address one of the oldest myths, the one that probably caused more supplement anxiety than anything else. Creatine and caffeine. I definitely remember meticulously separating my creatine dose from my morning coffee, convinced they canceled each other out.
Oh, yes. That was a very persistent belief. But thankfully, we can put that one mostly to rest. Current evidence overwhelmingly suggests that for most people, normal caffeine intake does not negate the performance benefits of creatine.
So you can have your pre-workout coffee and your creatine.
Yes. The fear was largely based on some early, possibly flawed interpretations or specific study designs. For the vast majority, they coexist just fine. Drink your coffee, take your creatine, get stronger.
What a relief. Okay, good. Let's pivot now to the marketplace, because this is where things get, well, confusing. You see monohydrate, but then there's HCl, chorealkaline, ethyl ester, all these different, often more expensive forms. If monohydrate is the benchmark, why do all these others exist?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the simple answer often comes down to marketing and addressing specific consumer complaints about monohydrate. Creatine monohydrate is the undisputed workhorse. It has the most research, it's incredibly cost-effective, and it's proven reliable time and time again.
That's why innovate.
Well, the market thrives on perceived innovation. The newer forms primarily try to solve two main issues people sometimes have with monohydrate. Number one, the texture, it can be gritty, And number two, temporary side effects like bloating or water retention.
Okay, let's break them down. Start with the original gangster. Creatine monohydrate, its pros and cons.
Pro, massive evidence base, decades of studies. Pro, very cost effective. Pro, readily absorbed by the body. Con, solubility isn't great. It can settle at the bottom of your glass, feel gritty. Con, GI symptoms are possible, especially if you take large doses on an empty stomach, like during loading. But like we said, splitting doses, taking with food, usually fixes that.
Right. Okay, now what about one of the popular alternatives? Creatine HCl hydrochloride, marketed for better solubility. Right.
Exactly. HCl's main selling point is that it dissolves much better in liquid, almost completely clear. So it definitely appeals to people who really dislike that sandy texture of monohydrate.
Does that improved solubility translate to better results, though? A better absorption or performance?
That's where the evidence gets much thinner compared to monohydrate. While it dissolves better in water, the actual uptake into the muscle seems generally similar to monohydrate when you match the dose based on the actual amount of creatine.
So similar results,
But a significantly higher cost per serving. There's just less high-quality, independent research showing it's truly superior in terms of performance outcomes. You're paying mostly for the improved mixing experience.
got it. So more of a convenience or preference thing than a performance upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
What about buffered crealkaline? That one often gets marketed as needing lower doses and causing less bloat.
Yes, crealkaline's claim revolves around stability in the stomach. The idea is that regular creatine can partly convert to an inactive byproduct, creatinine, in stomach acid before absorption. Crealkaline is buffered, meaning it has a higher pH. The manufacturers claim this buffering protects the creatine from converting to creatinine in the stomach, leading to supposedly better absorption, less waste, and therefore fewer side effects like bloating, even at potentially lower doses.
And does the science back up those claims? Better stability, fewer side effects?
The evidence is debatable and certainly not as robust as for monohydrate. Some studies show no significant difference in muscle saturation or side effects compared to monohydrate when dosed properly. The practical benefits over standard monohydrate remain quite controversial in the scientific literature. You're often paying a substantial premium for a theoretical advantage that hasn't been consistently proven superior in real-world outcomes.
So mostly marketing claims still.
Largely, yes. The core issue it claims to solve creatinine conversion might not be as significant a problem for absorption as initially thought, especially when monohydrate is taken correctly.
Interesting. Okay, one more common one. Micronized creatine, how does that fit in?
Micronized is actually quite straightforward and often a good choice. It isn't a different chemical form. It's still creatine monohydrate.
Oh.
The difference is purely physical. The monohydrate powder particles have been milled down to be much smaller micronized.
And the point of that is?
Better dissolution and mixing. Smaller particles dissolve more easily and stay suspended in liquid better. This improves the texture, reduces the grit, and might potentially reduce GI discomfort for sensitive individuals because it dissolves faster.
And performance-wise?
Performance outcomes are generally considered identical to standard monohydrate, assuming you're taking the same gram amount of creatine. And importantly, the cost is often very similar to standard monohydrate, maybe just slightly higher.
So micronized monohydrate could be a good middle ground if you dislike the texture but don't want to pay the premium for HCl or crealkaline.
Exactly. It addresses the solubility texture issue without changing the fundamental, well-researched molecule and usually without breaking the bank.
Okay, putting it all together then.
Yeah.
For the average person listening, trying to decide what to buy, what's a practical takeaway?
The conclusion from the bulk of the evidence is pretty firm. Creatine monohydrate standard, or micronized, is the undisputed workhorse. It has the vast evidence base, it's the most cost-effective, and it's incredibly reliable.
And the others? HCl crealkaline.
They really only become justifiable if those specific issues, solubility, texture, maybe perceived bloating, are such major deal breakers for you that you are willing to pay that significant price premium for the potential convenience. But don't expect fundamentally better muscle-building results.
That makes the choice much clearer. Monohydrate is the default, unless you have a specific reason and the budget for something else.
Precisely.
Okay, perfect. Now let's shift gears slightly to safety. This is probably the #1 concern people raise, especially worries about kidneys.
Understandably so. But the good news is, based on extensive research, creatine is generally considered very safe for healthy individuals when used at the recommended doses, typically that 3 to 5 grams per day range. Numerous studies, some spanning several years, have consistently shown no negative effects on kidney function or liver function in healthy people using standard doses.
So the kidney damage fears are largely unfounded for healthy users.
For healthy individuals following recommended guidelines, yes. The issues often arise from misinformation or extrapolation from cases involving pre-existing kidney conditions or massive overuse. Now, that doesn't mean it's entirely without potential minor side effects.
Right, like the ones we mentioned.
Exactly. Transient GI upset is possible, especially initially or with higher doses. That temporary bloating sensation can happen. And yes, there's typically a modest gain in water weight, maybe a couple of pounds.
By the water weight.
Because creatine, when it enters the muscle cell, draws water in with it. It's intracellular water inside the muscle, which actually contributes to cell volume and can be anabolic. It's not the same as subcutaneous water retention that makes you look puffy.
Okay, so it's water in the muscle, not just under the skin.
Correct. And again, mitigation for side effects is key. Split the dose if needed, always take it with food or a shake, and make sure you're drinking plenty of water throughout the day. Hydration is important.
But crucially, there are definite cautionary notes. It's not for everyone without checking first.
Absolutely critical point. If you have any pre-existing kidney disease, serious liver issues, high blood pressure, or other significant medical conditions, you must consult your doctor before considering creatine. It's non-negotiable.
Same goes for certain populations, right?
Yes. Due to limited safety data, individuals who are pregnant or breastfeeding should avoid it unless specifically advised by their healthcare provider. Similarly, use in children and adolescents should really only be under clinical guidance for specific reasons. Safety first, always.
Good. Glad we covered that thoroughly. Now, on a more positive note, let's circle back quickly to those special populations we touched on earlier, vegetarians and vegans. Why is creatine often particularly effective for them?
It comes down to their dietary baseline. Meat and fish are the primary natural sources of creatine. People following strictly plant-based diets consume very little, if any, dietary creatine.
So their starting muscle stores are lower.
Significantly lower, generally speaking. So when they start supplementing, the relative increase in their muscle creatine concentration is often much larger compared to an omnivore who already gets some from their diet.
Meaning they might see more pronounced benefits.
Potentially, yes. They have more room to fill up those stores, so the impact on strength, power, and muscle gain can be particularly noticeable. It makes creatine an especially effective supplement for this group. Though, again, adequate hydration is really important for them as those muscle cells start pulling in more water along with the creatine.
Makes sense. Okay, let's try and pull all this fantastic information together. If you're listening and thinking, right, I'm ready to start, what's the essential checklist distilled from all this research? First, seems like you need to choose your path. The slow and steady maintenance approach, 3-5G daily from the start, or the faster loading approach, 20 a day for a week, then maintenance. Loading isn't needed, but it's faster.
Correct. Decide if speed or simplicity tolerance is your priority.
Second, consistency is absolutely paramount. That 3 to 5 grams per day every day is the key for long-term benefits. Timing is secondary.
Nail that consistency.
And third, when you're buying. Creatine monohydrate, either standard or micronized, is the safe, effective, evidence-backed default choice. Don't feel pressured into expensive alternatives unless you have a very specific reason, like texture intolerance.
Couldn't agree more. Stick with the tried and true unless you have a strong personal preference and budget for the others. And one final, absolutely critical point on the buying side. Look for quality and purity. Regardless of the form you choose, try to select brands that use third-party testing.
Like NSF certified for sport, informed choice, or USP verified.
Exactly. Those certifications provide independent assurance that the product contains what it says it contains, and importantly, that it's free from harmful contaminants or banned substances. Don't skimp on quality control.
Excellent point. Okay, that brings us to our final provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over after this deep dive. We've established pretty clearly that creatine isn't just for bodybuilders anymore, right? Given those cognitive benefits we discussed, especially for people who are sleep-deprived or older adults dealing with metabolic stress, even vegetarians, how might this growing body of evidence start to reshape the public perception of creatine? Are we potentially seeing a shift where it moves beyond being just a sports supplement towards being seen as a broader tool, maybe for cognitive wellness, supporting brain energy, potentially even contributing to healthy aging strategies?
That's a fascinating question. It certainly has the potential to broaden its appeal and application well beyond the gym. It challenges the old stereotypes.
Definitely something to watch and think about how this knowledge might filter into wider health discussions. A potential pivot for how we think about foundational supplements.
Indeed. The science continues to evolve.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the real science and practical strategy behind creatine supplementation. We hope this cleared things up for you. We'll catch you next time.